Well, dear audience, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bern, welcome to this highly interesting conference indeed. Now, I'm challenging you to imagine you're standing on Alexander Square in Chur, in the canton of the Grisons, because that's where I was standing exactly 1 year ago. And I witnessed something interesting indeed. I witnessed a mixture of a public party, an open-air concert, and a cultural event, because the public assembled there, together with many representatives in culture, to take a stand against doing away with taxpayer funding for public service media. And shortly thereafter, the Swiss people in the referendum clearly said no to this initiative, and hence the Swiss public said yes to public funding of public service media. They did so because the people in Switzerland know how important publicly funded media is for the media landscape. When that referendum took place, I was still at the helm of the Department of Police and Justice, and in the 8 years I was in that function, I always took up cudgels for the rule of order, because without a clear rule of order there is no democracy. And you've heard it, for a few months now I've been in charge of infrastructure. That is, I'm in charge of all of these things that are necessary for the functioning of a country, for train tracks, for electricity grids, postal services. I'm in charge of infrastructure in Switzerland, and part of that infrastructure is also the media landscape, the media infrastructure that provides the public with reliable information. Without reliable information, without facts, there cannot be a debate, and hence there cannot be democracy. And hence my former job links up with my present job. In my new job, we're preparing the basis for a democratic debate. Media are the life insurance of a modern democracy. And that's why governments that want to weaken democratic states often attack the media, or they try to take control of media in a state. Of course, media are uncomfortable in a state. They have a role, they have a monitoring function, they question people in power and their decisions. The media are indeed the sting that keeps people in power on their toes. Critical media make sure that nobody becomes excessive in their exerting power. Facebook and Google cannot take on that role in spite of their millions of users, and they don't want to. Of course, they're financially powerful with all the monies they get from advertising, but they do not do their job to enlighten the public. They follow their own agenda, which is fine for them. They're entitled to following their own business model. But let's not confuse this with what we understand by journalism. It seems pertinent. Markets by themselves cannot create the preconditions for democratic debates. Markets do not take into consideration cultural or linguistic specificities of a country. Let's go back to Alexander Square in Chur that I mentioned before. It is no coincidence, specifically for the population in the canton of the Grisons, to take such a clear stand against doing away with taxpayer funding for public service media, because that canton of the Grisons is rich in beautiful scenery and linguistic and cultural diversity. German is being spoken, Italian, and Romansh is being spoken in that canton. The Grisons, however, are also the country of the 150 valleys. A democracy must be able to have journalists in every remote corner of every valley, because it's the journalists that uncover illegitimate business dealings, they uncover infringements on rural planning laws. And they make sure that all the facts are put on the table before a decision is taken, for example, on whether a canton should be in charge of Olympic Games. That's why we need public service media, because they do not have to abide by mercantile laws only. They know that linguistic cultural diversity issues are just as important as quota. On the other hand, though, those that want to weaken public service media also weaken the integrative function that they have, which is of particular relevance in a country with many different cultures and languages. The weaker an infrastructure with public service media, the stronger the influence of foreign media groups, influence also on national policies. You need to be perfectly aware of that. Particularly those that attack public service media here or elsewhere need to be aware of that fact. Public service media have been strengthened by this referendum on No Billag, which has not freed them of all their problems, because obviously consumers make use of media differently than they did before, and this raises challenges for public service media. Also, newspaper publishing houses are facing a very difficult situation indeed, if not a more difficult situation, because changes in consumption has a very direct bearing on their income. Almost half of the population in Switzerland no longer get their information through classical media. They get their information through news portals and social media. More people than before today do not follow any news, which is a challenge for advertising income. Populations are not prepared to pay for public service offerings, and that's a development that I see with some concern. As current Minister for Infrastructure, as former Minister for Public and Justice, I see that as a problem, because our country needs excellent service public, public service media, but it also needs a broad media landscape. Of course, today we're talking about public service media. It is, however, also our job to think of tomorrow. And a future without private publishing houses is unthinkable. I like to begin my day with the news on the radio, but at 7:30 at last, I want to have my newspaper available, print or online. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you're going to enjoy substantial and exciting discussions. Thank you very much indeed for taking up the democratic debate each and every day and for enriching it. Thank you.
Grazie mille.